Hi, everyone. I'm Rosemary Miller, and thank you for joining us for another episode of our Crypto Daily Show. On to the markets, which can be found at Forbes Digital Assets. The crypto market cap fell below the $1 trillion mark to roughly $950 billion, a 5% decrease over the last day. Bitcoin is in the $20,000 range, which is down almost 5% for the day, and Ethereum is currently around $1,300 and is down roughly 10% over the last 24 hours. Now, for our leaders and laggers, each of our leaders are down today, starting with Tron at 6 cents, down less than 1% for the day. ICP is at $6.22, down a little over 1%. Cosmos's Atom token is at $9.16, down about 2%. For our laggards, we have Polygon's Matic at 73 cents, down almost 11% over the last day. Solana is at $35.11, down 9% over the last day. And Ethereum is just under $1,400, down 10%. Hopping right into the news, did Coinbase improperly allow users to trade cryptocurrencies that should have been registered as securities? The SEC says yes in a reported investigation. Coinbase called on the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission last week to propose clearer rules after the agency said 9 of Coinbase's listed cryptocurrencies are securities. This comes after a civil suit against a former Coinbase employee and 2 associates for an alleged insider trading scheme, which is also the subject of a criminal case filed by the Department of Justice. Paul Grewal, who's Coinbase's chief legal officer, commented on Twitter, "We are confident that our rigorous diligence process, a process the SEC has already reviewed, keeps securities off our platform, and we look forward to engaging with the SEC on the matter." Binance's CEO, Changpeng Zhao, who also goes by CZ, filed a defamation lawsuit against a Bloomberg subsidiary in Hong Kong called Modern Media. CZ is pursuing the action because of an article accusing him of operating a Ponzi scheme. Modern Media's original headline for the article was, "Can Crypto's Richest Man Stand the Cold?" and was changed to Changpeng Zhao's Ponzi scheme. CZ said the article caused distress and embarrassment. In other news, Tesla reveals it sold 75% of its Bitcoin for $64 million profit while recording a $170 million impairment charge on its remaining holdings. Tesla wrote in its SEC filing, "We may make no upward revisions for any market price increases until a sale. These charges may negatively impact our profitability in the periods in which such impairments occur, even if the overall market values of these assets increase." After acquiring $1.5 billion worth in early 2021, it's estimated Tesla sold almost 30,000 Bitcoin at an average price of roughly $32,000, leaving the company with almost 10,000 Bitcoin worth just over $200 million. U.S. lawmakers delay the long-awaited stablecoin bill from its initial August date to possibly September or later. The bill is designed to establish a U.S. oversight regime for stablecoins. U.S. Senators Patrick Toomey of Pennsylvania and Kirsten Sinema of Arizona introduced a bill that would exempt crypto users from reporting any transactions up to $50 or any trade in which they earn less than $50. As the IRS has a crypto policy stating, when you sell virtual currency, you must recognize any capital gain or loss on the sale. The IRS declares this on their website. Today, I had the pleasure of speaking with Stephen Palley, a senior partner at Anderson Kill. Hi, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, how are you today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm pretty great. I'm pretty great. Yesterday was raining, but today's a rather nice day in New York. You're in New York, right?
No, I'm in DC. Looks like it's drizzling out here.
Oh, okay.
Not quite as hot as yesterday.
Yeah. So yesterday, I'm sure you've heard about the SEC probing into Coinbase, and I kind of want to know, like, what does that mean?
You're talking about the news report from Bloomberg about the fact that the SEC is potentially investigating Coinbase for listing what they view as unregistered securities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting, actually, this is the second conversation I've had about this morning, the third, in fact. So there's a lot of interest in this story. I think first you have to understand, by way of background, SEC investigations are confidential and non-public. And that is to protect the subjects of those investigations who haven't been proven to be liable in the civil case, or guilty in the criminal context, which is not an SEC issue. So it's interesting that this was leaked. Now, the question you have to ask is, who would have leaked that? I can't imagine that Coinbase would necessarily want to leak that news. They could just disclose it publicly if they wanted to. Typically, you don't do that. And SEC enforcement staff are typically pretty tight-lipped for precisely that reason. You're not supposed to disclose confidential, non-public investigations. So that's like the first question I have is, why is it in the public record? Who disclosed this? There are apparently 3 unnamed sources. It sounds pretty solid from a reporting standpoint. And then the question is, what does it mean? And I think in order to understand what it means, you have to understand last week's news, which I'm sure you're familiar with, right? So you want me to talk about that?
If you want to go into last week's news.
Sure. I just don't want to ramble at you. I want to let you ask questions.
Yeah.
So last week, the SEC announced insider trading charges against a former Coinbase employee and some people who are not Coinbase employees. And basically the gist of it is, the allegation was that they used non-public information about listings, for example, things that were going to be listed, to make money by trading on information that was material and non-public. Now, in order for the SEC to have jurisdiction, those things have to be securities. So the SEC in its charges identified a bunch of digital assets that it said were securities, and that was a violation of federal law, federal securities law, for them to trade on that information. The DOJ simultaneously released a criminal indictment for wire fraud. And now the question that I think some people had, including myself, was, it's interesting that the SEC charged these individuals with insider trading under securities law, saying these things were securities, but hadn't issued any charges against Coinbase. Coinbase is not a securities exchange. It's not, doesn't have the legal status of a company that needs to have in order to trade securities. So that was kind of puzzling. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Would you consider that the core issue here?
I mean, it's an issue, and this news seems to sort of answer it. The news suggests that while the SEC didn't announce charges against Coinbase, it is looking into whether or not Coinbase is selling securities, unregistered securities, that is. So apparently there is something else afoot.
So how does the SEC really determine what is a security?
Well, interesting that you should ask that. There is a, there's a body of case law. So first you have some statutes, you've got laws, you've got the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, which were laws that came into existence after the economic calamity of the Great Depression. The notion is basically want to provide stable marketplaces, give buyers of securities full and fair disclosure about risks. And in sort of the wake of those laws, courts looked at securities claims and reached conclusions about how to figure out if somebody is selling a security. Security is defined by those laws. One of the definitions in the definition is the term investment contract, and that's a type of security. There are many other types of securities too, like a bond is a type of a security. An investment contract was defined by a seminal 1947 Supreme Court case called SEC versus W.J. Howie, which involved orange groves. I won't go into that. As an investment of money in a common enterprise with an expectation of profits solely from the managerial or entrepreneurial efforts of others. Subsequent cases have provided sort of further definitional meaning, but that's how the SEC does it. And if you look at the charges that they filed, you'll see with respect to the assets that they listed, they went through what lawyers would basically call a Howie analysis as to sort of the, was there investment of money? Did somebody pay money? Payment of money can be effort, can be sort of non-pecuniary. Was there a common enterprise? There are a couple different definitions that are used there, but a pooling of money or reliance on others, which kind of ties into another prong of Howie. And was there an expectation of profits based on the efforts of others? So one of the things that the SEC appeared to look at is there a known centralized team, right? So that's how the analysis is done. And it's how it's been done in this country for, golly, like more than 70 years, 75 years. The case law is pretty well established.
So what are the possible outcomes of this probe?
Well, so again, we don't know because it's non-public what the SEC is or is not looking at. We have to assume that, they're unnamed sources, but 3 of them is pretty good sourcing. One would assume that Bloomberg wouldn't publish the story if the editors didn't feel pretty solid on the sources. A bunch of things could happen. The SEC could insist that that Coinbase registers as a national securities exchange, or something called an ATS, which is sort of like a simplified version of an exchange. The SEC could demand that these assets, and potentially others, because there are others described in the complaint, but the names weren't given. The SEC could require or demand that these things be delisted. There could be fines and penalties involved. My expectation is, and this is purely a guess, I don't represent Coinbase, and if I had inside information about the goings on there, I couldn't talk to you. So this is a lawyer who, with some experience looking at it from the outside, at the messaging. I think my sense is Coinbase would fight if pushed by the SEC to delist things. Their general counsel wrote a blog post where he insisted rather stridently that they don't list securities. So I think what we'd have is a fight that would take a long time to resolve. Whether or not the SEC will go there, I sure don't know.
Do you think this is the SEC's way of kind of making an example out of Coinbase? Because there are quite a few exchanges that list the same cryptocurrencies as Coinbase.
I don't know. Again, you can't really say they're making an example, because the investigation, if there is an investigation, it's non-public. I would be surprised if the SEC leaked this information. Or the 3 staff within the SEC leaked it. You're just not supposed to. It violates commission rules. What's that?
What are the consequences of leaking information?
I mean, I don't know. I suppose you get fired. You're not supposed to do that. So I don't. It strikes me as I would be surprised if the leak came from the SEC. I mean, it's certainly not impossible, but it doesn't seem. I'm a little bit skeptical that that's where it came from.
If not the SEC, if not Coinbase.
I have no idea.
No, we have no idea. Who would benefit the most from leaking this information?
I mean, it could be, you're a reporter, you know how this works. Sometimes people speak to you off the record or on background because they know something that you want to know, and you're going to do a favor for them later. So maybe it was that. Maybe it could be people with relationships with the reporter speaking on background. Could be lawyers. Also, not a really good idea for a lawyer involved in something like that to leak this information. But again, we don't know. We're just shooting in the dark. It is interesting. I think it is probably more likely than not that this investigation is going on, may have been going on for a while. It does answer the question as to why would you go after these employees for insider trading involving unregistered securities, but not go after the platform where these things were allegedly traded? That struck me as odd. Some people, there is an answer to that somebody on Twitter, a former enforcement lawyer, pointed out, which I thought was interesting and insightful. And his view was it could be that the SEC sees insider trading as more problematic, a threat to market integrity than sort of a technical violation of registration requirements. I can't tell you how true or not true that is, but it's it's certainly a fair point.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Stephen.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you all so much for joining us, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Forbes Crypto, and feel free to send me any tips at Rosemarie TV. Peace.